You think?
That's just about.
Okay, yeah. Okay, test. I'd have to be pretty close. Test. I'm gonna have to be pretty close, correct?
Ah, perfect.
Let's see if we can-
Okay, yes. Oh, that's perfect. Okay, yeah, I'll just move it if I get too tired. Thank you, sir.
Okay, hello, everybody. We are at a special meeting of the Board of Trustees of Harlandale ISD. Today is April 18th, 2023. We are beginning our meeting at 6:17. I'm going to do roll call electronically, please. If you could open that for us. I was like, it looks different. I don't know. Okay, can we close the roll call vote, please? So we do have a quorum. Mrs. Limon is unable to be at tonight's meeting and sends her regrets. Agenda item 1C, Mr. Soto.
Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, HISD Community. This evening, we have our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Ms. Casey.
Hello, Ms. Casey. Thanks for joining us. And we also have Dr. Judy Castleberry tonight. Hi, Dr. Castleberry.
Thank you.
Ms. Patty, did anybody sign up for public comment? Okay, no one signed up for public comment this evening. Moving on to agenda item 3, the board will convene in a Lone Star governance training session with Region 20 to review and discuss Lone Star governance and board operating procedures. Ms. McAnally, we're ready.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Mr. Soto, Dr. Castleberry, and others. So good evening. I know 2 nights in a row are hard to do. I was in my jammies watching you last night, so appreciate your being here tonight for our quarterly LSG review. So let me get us started. We're going to start with our BOP. And finish where we were last time. We did check off, the first thing was our theory of action. So we did review that. And so tonight we're going to go through and finish our BOP, but my goal is to get us into exit criteria tonight and some other things related to Lone Star governance. And so these are the items we'll look at. We'll look at some things in your manual, including the time use reports that Ms. Ortiz reports monthly. Then we'll look at the quarterly board tracker, which you sign monthly, which is a different report. And then we're going to talk some about how do we show progress and accountability through the things that we do over the next couple of months. We did that already. So we are actually here and we stopped with group 3, which is Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Cavazos at our last meeting. And help remind me, ladies, I believe that we had gotten to, in our new copy, it's on page 12, correct? I'm going to ask you to help refresh my memory. I think that we stopped. I know we're in the revised copy, not your old copy, that we had gotten to.
It's the first one. Okay.
I have us on group 3. We're group 3. And I have that we had Roman numeral. I actually have us at Roman numeral 9. I believe that we had already walked through Roman numeral 8, but I'm going to ask Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Cavazos to help me. I believe that we'd gotten through. Okay. So are we in the revised copy, ladies? Is that what we're doing tonight?
The new one. Yes, it actually says they're revised.
I'm on page 12 of the revised copy. Yes, ma'am. If Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Cavazos agree that they had finished page 11, communication with media, I'm fairly sure we were through with.
I'll be real honest. I don't remember us having that section.
We were on, the part of, who can ask for names or persons that are requesting information that we're asking them.
Okay, I had drawn the line at the top of, I had stopped us at communication with media. As we made additional corrections. The last place that we had edits, I just compared with Miss Patty. We made corrections on page 10 of the old copy under complaints and grievances. We'd made corrections there, and then we made corrections under board member visits to school campuses, which is Roman numeral 7. And so that's the last place that I show a correction is visits to campus. And so Roman numeral 7.
There, I would like to go back because I would like to. Are we gonna have an opportunity to go back and revisit?
Well, yes, let's work through this process and then we're going to do some additions and then I'll ask if there are any others. Just don't let me forget that, Ms. Carrillo. Okay.
Madam
Okay.
Chair. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Ms. McAnally, you're correct. On page 12, we left off on communication with media on the original one. That where if you're on the revised one, then it's on page 11, letter B. And it's in the middle of the page, communication with the media. So
Yes.
hopefully that helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's sort of an affirmation. So, and that's where I had it marked. That's where Miss Patty had it marked. So, and I believe Ms. Cavazos as well. So as we look there at communication with media, do we want to start there and review your notes there, Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Cavazos?
I don't have any notes on that. I don't remember that being part of our section.
Okay, group 3, I was having you guys go to, let me see.
Now, I was jumping from section to section to section because I had done notes on the entire BOP.
Yes, ma'am.
But I remember we had a very small section.
All right.
See, if I remember correctly, that's what threw us off because she was jumping from one thing to another, covering everybody else.
Yes,
She did homework, right?
I did
And,
because
She
I
did
thought we were gonna-
homework.
I went through the whole.
So that's
BOP and
why
made my comments,
I, wa-
yes.
I also wanted to review because there
Right.
was some things that I didn't agree
Right.
with that we had talked in the
Right.
past, but I didn't know whether it was the time or the place
Okay.
to discuss that.
All right, I have us, I highlighted where we were at group 3 and these are the assignments. And the assignment was for you guys to go to standards of behavior on page, what's now the revised page 13. But why don't we just start then as a group there at communication with media? If that's, and we can just work through it if that's better. I don't want to confuse people. So looking at B in the revised version on page 11, I'm under B, communication with media. Is everybody with me in the revised version and we all have the same pagination? All right. And number 1 is who the designee is to speak with media. Please look at that and see if you have any questions or comments on number 1. It's the designee that shall be the official spokesperson for the board. And so board president, superintendent can also designate someone. Typically, I don't know, Mr. Soto, is it your public information's officer typically? Okay. Notice your last sentence. Then if there's a request from the media, it goes to the board president or superintendent. Anything, this is very normal language. So any questions or comments on number 1? What about on number 2? It shall not, board members shall not speak in an official capacity outside the boardroom without prior authorization from the board. Sort of thumbs up on that. That's very common language. And then number 3, in speaking to media, board member about his or her position on an issue should not offer speculation about the future. Should make it clear that he or she is not speaking on behalf of the board or the district. And should support the board as a whole. That's very common language pretty much throughout the state on BOPs. Everyone sort of a thumbs up on that one. Okay, let's go to anonymous phone calls and/or letters. This is common language that you've had in there for quite some time, that there's not going to be attention, discussion, or response or directives related to anonymous letters or calls. Everyone okay on that? Okay, let's go to communication with the public then. Look at number 1 on the board shall not discuss public business, public policy, except as permitted by law, either individually or collectively. That's common language and relates to those things that are protected related to HIPAA, private information, et cetera. Number 2, shall not discuss anyone's information related to assignment, reassignment, salary, benefits, evaluation, et cetera, unless the superintendent's notified in advance and agrees with respect to superintendent's employment. Board members must keep in mind that Texas Education Code specifically provides that evaluations of certified employees are confidential. So this is in how one deals with evaluations. Questions or comments there? That's straight out of statute, basically out of law. Number 3, board agrees to address, resolve disputes, disagreements, complaints with the superintendent in a professional manner and in compliance with his or her contract as applicable to laws. That's out of statute as well. Okay with that one? And then number 4, shall not meet with or discuss district business directly, indirectly with vendors. And then there's a list of those: lobbyists, consultants, et cetera, current or prospective, during any ongoing procurement process that said vendor is part of. That has not changed. That's okay. Then under superintendent evaluation, number 1 will be, I'm going to do highlights here, evaluate on an annual basis. The instrument's been selected and approved by the board and will include LSG student outcome goals. We'll use a summative process. Doesn't mean you can't do a mid-year formative, but you will use a summative process. You may conduct, communicate orally or written evaluations to augment or follow up the annual written evaluation and bring to attention of superintendent any performance issues that may arise. That's fairly standard language as well. Any questions, comments there, board? Okay, on number 2, related to the superintendent's performance review, it's based on those annual goals, and it repeats again, including your LSG student outcome goals, the priorities that have been established jointly by the board and the superintendent. So other items that you have jointly agreed to. The written evaluation shall be based on his job description, and you'll find that in your board policy under BJA, and other criteria that the board has identified prior to the process, of course. And you will use an appraisal process, performance criteria that's developed and adopted by the board in consultation with your legal counsel. And we'll conduct a formal evaluation in September and informal in February. So you've spelled it out very precisely according to your BJA policy. Is there anything that you notice there that you're not doing? Because we want to make sure your practice and policy and BOP match. Are we ready to move to board self-eval? Okay, board self-eval. The board and superintendent are committed to the team of 8 as the driver for the district and recognize that superintendent and board shall succeed or fail together. So that's more a statement rather than any action. A self-evaluation of the board may be conducted on a quarterly basis in a workshop session each year using indicators in the BOP and the framework for school board development set out in BBD in your policy exhibits. And in addition, the board will conduct quarterly self-evaluations using the LSG integrity instrument rubric. So you have 2 different ways that you can do that. You can use the framework from TASB, or you can use we do the LSG quarterly evaluation as well. And number 3, the board self-evaluation instrument shall be reviewed and approved annually. Or is that being done, that you're approving if you're doing anything other than LSG? So if you're using another instrument that you're getting from TASB, that would need to be, so y'all are not doing that. You have language in there, should you choose to, because it doesn't say that you will, it says it may be. So thought on that? Yes, that's what I said. It doesn't say you will, it says it may. So that gives you the option, board, to do LSG quarterly evaluations. Those are done, but you have the option to use something from TASB in board framework if you chose to do another evaluation. In addition,
If we choose to use a different instrument other than the LSG one. Is that what
no,
you're saying?
this is in addition to.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the
in
way I'm
addition to.
reading this,
Okay.
that you could do 2. You could, because you're doing your LSG as part of being an LSG district. You're already doing those quarterly evals. This one would be in addition to it. Well, TASB has what they call a school board audit, and it's quite lengthy. It's like 20 or so pages. But you certainly could go through that if you chose to do that in addition to your LSG. It's called the board self-evaluation, and it's an instrument. I'm guessing TASB still has it. It used to be great. I used it with our board did that.
So it's not lengthy, it's 20 pages.
It is lengthy, yes. 20 pages is fairly lengthy when you think in comparison to the LSG 1-pager that you go through. So yes, it's quite long. Do you want any changes on number 2 or leave it as is so that you have a choice there to add something if you wanted to?
I think we should just leave it as is to have that option, right?
And I guess I could, Madam Chair, just to clarify, Ms. McNally, is this a part where I can discuss the time use tracker and how it relates to our self-evaluation?
I actually have some slides related to it. And so we can either do it there or you can wait till we get to the slide. And if you will write yourself a note to remind me, I know you won't forget. You won't forget. So yes, we'll get there. Number 3, the board self-evaluation instrument may be reviewed and approved annually. And it says the same thing, may be. So that means you can have something in addition to Lone Star governance. All right, board standard code of behavior. And this is straight out of TASB policy. You'll even see references there. To what code of conduct and standard of behavior. Number 1, board shall be knowledgeable of, abide by Board of Trustees code of conduct. And that's in your board operating procedure on page 3. And that's tied to the ethics statements. I'll tell the truth. I'll be on, all of those kinds of things that spell out the word ethics. Is that one okay? Number 2, board president shall present a copy of the BOP and the code of ethics to each board member after each board election. So we would want to leave that, I'm guessing, yes, okay. Each board member shall sign an annual statement of disclosure according to board policy, and it lists legal and local, and that's actually required in statute. So you would want to leave that, of course. And number 4, any violation or infractions of the BOP shall result in the following. A, board member expresses concern about another member's performance directly to that member in a professional and respectful manner. And B, addressing the issue directly with the member does not resolve the concern. If it does not, then discussion with the president is appropriate. If the issue is with the board president, then discuss with the board vice president or secretary, not the superintendent. Everyone okay with that? And okay. Then you'll see under number 5, related to LSG and team of 8, unity, which we call synergy and teamwork, the board will self-regulate board sponsorship. Sponsorship by one or more board members of an event designated for district students or staff or held in district facilities shall require prior approval of the board. At the beginning of the school year, superintendent will provide the board with a calendar of district-sponsored events, and with input from the superintendent, the board will select 3 events to partner with. And that you've had, I believe, 3 or 4 years. So so going forward, do you think this is still appropriate language then? If you choose to do that, it's giving you choice here. You don't have to. Okay. So are we okay to move to advocacy? Okay, board members are encouraged to be advocates not only for HISD, but all public education. Through training and conferences, board members will become familiar with issues affecting HISD and other school districts across the state. And that goes with your advocacy goal related to Lone Star governance and to school board framework.
I have a comment on that. Board members are encouraged. I don't like the word encouraged because we are not here so someone can push us to do our job. We're here because we want to be advocates for our district and public education. I suggest we put board members are expected to be advocates, not encouraged.
That adds strength to it. That's a stronger word. I guess give a thumbs up, board
Thumbs.
members. We're not voting, but just
Yes.
sort of a thumbs up for consensus is the word change. Or no, are expected to be advocates. Oh, I see. So just saying board members are advocates not only for HISD, but all public education, as in a direct statement. Is that okay? It really is. It kind of changes it. Right. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Does having expected in there add strength to that statement if a board member didn't know they should be an advocate, or you think it's better just to say that you are advocates?
Reputation if they're saying that we don't live up to that standard.
Mhm.
How is it that we want to convey that to probably, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What if you, well, I was. This is why, because I know in the past, not with us, there have been some board members who were for charter schools. And in my opinion, we need to advocate for public education with this district. If you want to, if any of us would rather, be on the other side, well then leave this position and head over there. Yes, that was where
Mhm.
I was trying to lead to.
Mhm.
It hasn't happened here and nor I hope it does, but I know in the past there were issues.
So if we would leave it as are expected to be advocates and then also have Miss Patty put board members are advocates because Mr. Resendez does the final view of this to make sure that it aligns with statute and with your board policy. So may we have 2 iterations or 2 examples there and let him choose? Are y'all okay with that? Right. Or just say, and then also your version, board members are advocates, and then he can choose which one he thinks most aligns with statute and with practice and with policy. Because we are expected to be advocates, we really are. So are y'all okay putting both iterations and both versions and then letting him decide? Of are expected? Okay, all right. That's true. Okay, so are expected wins out. All right, all right. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay, on page 14, number 2. This is dealing with working with legislators, elected officials locally, state and nationally. Is part of what we do as board members, and building these partnerships serve to strengthen all for public education. More just a statement of sort of point of view there of what board members should do, advocating at all levels. And then closed session, letter A. I'm going to ask someone to kind of help me with the reading so I don't lose my voice. Ms. Cavazos, do you mind to read conduct of closed session?
Yes, I don't mind. Conduct of closed session. The board may conduct a closed session for any of the purposes described in or permitted by the provisions identified in BEC legal.
Okay, and that's just a statement of fact there. And on B, Ms. Ortiz, actions, decisions, or votes, please. Would you read that one, please, ma'am?
No final action, decision, or vote shall be taken while the board is in closed session. The presiding officer shall so state prior to entering into closed session. The board shall reconvene the open meeting after a closed session prior to adjourning the meeting in accordance with Texas Government Code Section 551.102. Any final action, decision, or vote on a matter deliberated in closed session can only be made in open session.
Right, and that's pretty well out of statute. It's pretty clear. Can't vote in private, can't straw poll in private. It has to all be under public purview. And that's out of board policy as well. Campaigning for reelection, election or reelection, and election activities. Letter A, Mr. Moreno.
Sure, ma'am. Board members will follow all applicable law and all campaign activities.
So pretty straightforward and to the point, right? And what about B also? I'm sorry. Oh, yes, we did, didn't we? I'm so sorry. I just jumped that. Would you read letter C also, Mr. Moreno? We'll come back.
Sure.
I guess I did. I am so sorry.
The board secretary shall prepare the certified agenda required by law. The topics of each meeting shall be documented in writing to serve as an additional record of the meeting. Section 551.014 of the Open Meetings Act requires governmental bodies such as the board to preserve the certified agenda or tape recording of a closed meeting for at least 2 years after the date of the meeting. The certified agenda or tape recordings for grievance matters of a closed meeting is available for public inspection and copying only under a court order. Board members agree to refrain from revealing or discussing information that has been presented to the board in closed sessions to anyone, including family members.
Right. And that's pretty well straight out of statute and from your board policy. Any questions there? Fairly straightforward. And then letter A, which has already been read, but everyone's thumbs up on letter A. Letter B, please, Ms. Carrillo. Under
Neither the
election.
board
Mhm.
as a body corporate nor any board member individually will use district funds or other resources to electioneer for or against any candidate, measure on a ballot or political party, Texas Code 11.169.
And that's straight out of code and is just there for a reminder so that if anybody didn't know, so do you want to leave as is since it's straight out of election code? And then Mr. Mancha, seeking endorsements.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I always think my voice is so loud.
It is, but go ahead.
Seeking
sir.
endorsement, no board member seeking re-election to the board will solicit district employees to endorsement during such employees' work hours or at any time while on district property.
Okay, and that's also straight out of statute. Any questions on seeking endorsements there? And then providing endorsements at the bottom starts a new division. Ms. Cavazos, letter A.
The board as a body corporate will not endorse any candidate running for any public office.
Okay. And I believe that's in statute as well as you've had that in your BOP for quite some time. Questions, comments on that? And letter B, Ms. Ortiz. Oh,
Recognize.
Mr. Luna.
Mr. Luna.
I was
I
just
am
gonna say,
so
he needs to
sorry.
read too.
My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Luna.
If I may.
Yes,
respond.
sir.
Can we endorse as an individual, not as a body, but as an individual on letter A? It's on B, okay.
Yes, sir. That's okay. Good question. Mr. Luna, letter B.
Recognizing that the board operates as a nonpartisan elected body that works with other elected officials in its duties, individual board members should exercise heightened caution when providing a personal endorsement to any candidate, including all social media.
So you. Mm-hmm. You can, but be careful
Yeah, and
because
I
if,
know-
go ahead, Ms. Cavazos.
I know that in the past, our legal has said it is imperative that you put their single member district if you're going to endorse, because that indicates you as an individual, not you as the entire board.
Got you. Got you.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions related to A and B? Okay, board elections, letter A, and I think we're back to Ms. Ortiz now.
Board members serve 4-year terms that expire on a rotating basis. A board election is held in May in odd number years to fill seats that are contested or will become vacant. If all seats are uncontested, the election may be canceled. At the conclusion of an election, board members work together as a body corporate to govern the district in a cooperative manner.
Okay. Any questions there? Thus the reason for the non-endorsement, because if we endorse and someone else is elected, it could lead to a lack of synergy and unity there. Letter B, Mr. Moreno.
Individually, board members may participate in the electoral process according to each board member's individual conscience. However, board members' support of candidates in a board election can have an adverse impact on the ability to function cohesively and constructively as a corporate body.
Right. So just a reminder also out of board policy as well. Any problematic language there, or everybody's okay to move to letter C, Ms. Carrillo?
Board members are encouraged to consider such impact as well as the influence their elected position may elicit in the political process, and therefore should give careful consideration prior to endorsing any candidate running for the board, BE legal and BBC legal.
Right. Which kind of says the same thing as B, but sort of as an expansion on there. Everybody thumbs up on that. Is that okay? All right. And then Mr. Mancha on Roman numeral 15, use of social media platforms.
The board members will be allowed to use the district social media platform to inform community members of their official independent events that are directly related to the district. Their use of these platforms will be consistent with district policy and procedures.
Okay. Is that working okay on, as far as you guys know, on social media? No. Okay, great. Mr. Luna, Roman numeral 16, board member vacancy, letter A, please, sir.
Board member vacancy. Vacancies on the board may and do occur at times other than at the end of a term. Trustee vacancies may occur if a trustee moves out of the school district, resigns for personal reasons, encounters sudden death or illness, or some other valid reason to resign.
Okay. And that, I believe, is out of those related policies that you'll see there at the bottom of the page. And letter B, Ms. Cavazos.
The departing board member should give written notice of impending resignation and deliver it to the board president. Possible courses of action include special election, regularly scheduled election, appointment until a regular scheduled election, leave seat vacant. Its related policies are BDAA legal, BDAA local.
And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end, but to consider some additions. And so let me bring those up if we could.
And I think also, Ms. Carrillo, you wanted to go back to
Right.
some
Yes.
sections, right?
Right, yeah, let me do additions and then we'll go back. And so here is an addition you'll find in your packet, thanks to Miss Patty, on board travel. There's some language there. If you can't see it here on my little example, that's I believe it's the second handout related to board travel. And we looked at this last time. There were 3 items. These came from Mr. Ascendus, so the wording is done correctly as far as legally. And so looking at number 1, where did I stop? Did I get to you, Mr. Mancha, or not? I stopped with you? Okay. Oh, it's under board attending, I believe it's under meetings. Let's see where that was. Travel or.
I want to know where it's going to go in our board operating.
In most of the ones I've worked with, they have a section that says board travel and meetings. And so that's where they put these kinds of things. And so it's a separate category. No, it's not on your table of contents. So that would have to be an addition. It's just an addendum.
You think it would be on 11, after 11?
So we have it under school board, item number 3 and 4, we have training orientation. And then we have number 4, travel expenses. It's page 5 on the revised one. So it's not its own I guess,
Oh, yes, I see it. Yes.
subcategory.
I was looking for a Roman numeral.
So you could do it in whichever way you think makes the most sense. That's a good place where Mr. Moreno suggested, if you all agree to that.
I'm okay with it.
So we want to let Miss Patty get that. Do you mind repeating that, Mr. Moreno, so everyone can write that in? I didn't have my pen at the time, so.
So should be on page 5. I guess under row school board of trustees, item A, duties of the school board. The sections are number 3 and number 4, training orientation and travel expenses.
This would be number 4. We added one in number 4. And number 4. And number 4 would have 1, 2, and 3 underneath that. Is that correct?
It- 2's more aligned with 3, and then 1 and 3 are more aligned with travel expenses.
So maybe it would be 3A. Right. So
where we already have 3 training/orientation. It would be maybe 3A, and we add the number 2 as the A part of the insert. And then I guess on the number 4 is the travel expenses, it would be 4A and B, 1 and 3. Yes. Does that make sense?
So do you need Ms. Cavazos to repeat that so everybody can get that in their edit? Or are we good? That's the main thing, Ms. Ms. Juarez gets it. That's right. So are we good there, Ms. Juarez? Good. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Moreno. So let's look at the items here. I think we discussed this last time, but this is not uncommon. I'll just tell you, I've looked at lots and lots of BOPs. It's not uncommon to have something about travel and clarify those kinds of things. And so the first bullet, Mr. Luna, do you mind to read that first bullet at the top under board travel? Yes, sir.
Okay, all board members' training travel expense paid by the Harlem ISD will be set as part of the total budget and must have a direct benefit on the board's members' ability to perform as an effective board member.
So basically just a statement of fact that it's built into the budget. So I'm sure it already is that board travel is built into the budget. And then the second bullet there, Ms. Cavazos.
For travel expenses.
Yes, ma'am, please.
It would be 4B, and that would be board members who cancel paid conferences, events, or meetings, such as but not limited to chamber luncheons without good cause that result in the district incurring expenses shall reimburse the district for the expense before the end of the school calendar year. Board members should notify the board secretary to the superintendent if they change their calendar RSVP 48 hours before the event.
Okay, and that came straight from Capel ISD. I go through and I look at other school districts' language, so this will still have to be vetted by Mr. Ascendus to make sure that it's written, and I'm sure theirs was vetted as well. But okay,
The limit, we're not in, we don't, we're not, how can I say? My words, my brain just went. Such as, but not limited to chamber of luncheons.
that was out of Capel's.
Intended.
That probably needs to be struck. I didn't know if you guys attended chamber luncheons or not, so maybe that needs to be struck.
We do on occasion, but we're pretty good at letting Patty know we're not gonna go or not.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
we are, so. So let's,
You want to strike it then?
Yes.
Is okay. All right. So that language you can strike then. And then the rest, and that's pretty common language. Many of them do not say that you could have till the end of the year. Some do, some need to be paid immediately. It's just kind of varies with the district. And then the last one is the second one here, which would become 4C, I believe. Ms. Ortiz, would you read that one, please? It'll be 3A, sorry.
Number 2, all board members attending a conference or training session are expected to attend a majority or more of available continuing education opportunities. Harlandale Independent School District Board Operating Procedures.
You can tell why that was probably added to Capel's. What does that tell you about some of their board members? So yes, that they were not attending. So yes, Mr. Moreno, you're
Yeah. I'm just
studying
thinking,
that.
well, because the only thing is, because I know this is always associated with like conferences, and most of our conferences where they're part of like TASB, MASBA,
Right.
all these organizations that are pertaining towards our, bettering ourselves for our position.
Yes, sir.
Like luncheons and stuff. I know sometimes they've asked for us to do stuff and they want us to buy a table at like a huge amount of money. I mean, I'm not for that.
Right.
So I don't know where how that would align with it. I don't know how we can add that into when we make sure we're not spending, because our budget's already there limited for our
That's
training,
right.
not necessarily for us to go buy tables to
Right.
represent the district. So I don't know, Mr. Soto, you're the one that gets these inquiries, right? So I don't know how this typically works, because we've never really attended like those type of events as a group.
Yes, sir.
I think this is really in reference to conferences and training, not in purchasing, for events. Because there are going to be things way outside your BOP. We can't probably put everything in there. So is it okay for that to not be in there?
So is that where it should be aligned within just conferences and trainings?
Yes, sir. Don't y'all think?
Yeah, because
Conferences
I
and
mean, we
training?
shouldn't be really going to galas or stuff like that.
So cut events and or meetings that are in that
We
other
can
one?
go on our own if we want to purchase it, but I don't think the school district should be paying for us to go as a team or something.
Okay, so
But I have to not disagree, but I have to put this in there. We attend the breakfast for the South Texas business and the district does pay for that. It's $15. We don't attend all of them.
Yeah, that's minimal.
Yeah,
I'm talking about when they're asking for like us to buy a table of
yeah.
10 for $10,000 and you're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
we don't do that at all. Uh-huh.
okay, so
But are we doing it for future board members?
I mean, if we feel it's necessary, I mean, I'm fine with the language. It's just, I just wanted to make sure that people know it's like the conferences and the trainings that we have, so. And
Madam
they
Chair.
shouldn't be thinking like, I'm gonna go to these big
Right.
fancy things,
Uh-huh.
right,
Yes, Mr. Mancha.
Does this money come out of the budget?
yes, sir.
So most of the trips and everything comes out of the budget. The trainings. Is one of the things that I never understood, whether it's a separate budget that we align at the end of in the beginning of the year. And then we feed off of that,
Yes.
and once it's empty, we don't touch it anymore? Or do we go back and as things have gone, because we never used to have this breakfast thing. So now all of a sudden we're having it and the district's paying for it, which I totally disagree with. Because if we want to go, we should pay for it ourselves at $15. So I'm wondering if it's coming out of the budget. And did we have to add to the budget? Because this all of a sudden happened within the last 2-3 years? Is my concern.
We actually are members, we have been members of the South Texas Chambers for years. And nobody even knew that, Southside Chambers, right? Now it's called the South Texas. No, yeah, you chose. Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Well, and I have to assume, but I'll direct that to Mr. Soto or even Mr. Hernandez. Do we in one school calendar year exhaust the funds that have been allocated for this? Okay, I guess that question would be better for Mr. Hernandez, because he would tell us. Uh-huh.
That usually, we get that disclosed every year
Uh-huh.
at a public meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were looking this way. I apologize. Yeah, but you didn't mention names, so I didn't know if you were addressing it to me or to who. So,
Yes, great question, Mr. Mancha. There's a budget set aside for the board and it does encompass all that the board does expend. This year has been, we have expended a lot of funding for the board. What was one of the major ones that we didn't account for, Ms. Patty, that was? Yeah, there was a couple of visioning conference that were not budgeted during the spring, but it was worth our training to go down there. And I believe we had 4 board members go with the Thompson Academy. And so that was one of the ones that we hadn't accounted for. And so we ended up getting some funding for that from our budget. Right, Ms. Patty? But we have our own budget. Superintendent has, and it's a very, 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 very small budget that I was able to supplement some of my superintendent budget to help the board's budget. right? But we're all in the same, we're in the same group, right? But the rest is how the board wants to operate on. If I've seen some earlier BOPs that limited y'all's travel, that's on you guys on how y'all want to handle it. I mean, we just set money aside when you guys decide on how y'all want us to proceed.
I think one thing that could help us going forward, because there's some groups or organizations that offer a lot of free activities. And so if you're not aware of them, you don't take advantage of them. So I think there's a couple organizations that we're a part of that, unfortunately, I don't think everybody is aware that, hey, I'm a part of that organization, because I didn't know we were a part of that network. And then I've been on this board for 8 years, and that's never been brought up to us. You know, there's some people that still don't know that we're a part of NALEO, and, you know, I'm gonna have probably a scholarship to go somewhere if next month, if hopefully I get reelected. But the idea is like you go to these organizations and they'll provide the resources to get you there for the proper training. MASBA, most of the time they'll help supplement some stuff. TASB, you know, it's just, they're always going to charge you the amount, no matter what. So those are the things, because I remember even one year I was looking at, are we a part of the NASB, the National Association of School Boards, and we're not. And so I remember Ms. Diaz, she was like, we were in the past, but you know, but they've had some friction between TASB and NASB. So that's why I think we've kind of separated from them. So,
Okay,
but yeah, it's a different group. So I think it would be fair, I guess, I don't know if it would be Ms. Juarez or whom, to kind of give us an idea of which groups we are a part of. Because then we can maybe say, you know, it's kind of like those magazines that we get that you don't know, like, hey, I'm still paying that membership. Like, maybe I need to delete this, you know, like if we don't need it, or we don't want to be, one person doesn't want to be a part of it because you're not reaping the benefits then.
And I will tell you, those breakfasts come in very handy, because we have been able to redirect a lot of community members to the Sosa Center, who have now partnered up with Harlandale ISD to provide for our teachers, our staff, and our students. That networking breakfast that we attend, and we don't attend every month. Sometimes it's just one of us, sometimes it's two. It just depends on our schedules, and everybody's welcome to go. They have opened the doors to a lot of partnerships with Harlandale ISD, per Ms. Gallegos. You know, she lets us know about that. I think Ronald McDonald House, there are a lot of more partners than we were in the past with the district.
So related to board travel, are we okay with this language? Is there anything else we need to remove? So-
Well, I just wanted to make one comment.
Okay.
The fact that the board provides funding for, the district provides funding for board members, it's really an equity issue. Because there may be board members who would not be able to pay out of pocket. And so it levels the playing field for there to be resources from the district. I think that's important to remember, even though you still pay money to travel.
Right, right.
Just don't make it excessive.
Right, that's right. All right, so we've added these items related to board travel, and then this is board attendance. And the language here came from Mr. Resendez, and you have a handout for that related to board member attendance. And it says on your handout to be added under section 4. And that, if you look at your agenda, that's going to be related to conduct during board meetings. Or that's the section, page 6-ish. And so if you can find your example there, and since it's 4 paragraphs, I probably should have numbered them, but looking at the first one, and where did we stop? Did we get to Ms. Ortiz, I believe?
I'm going to read off of this, right?
Okay.
This one sheet.
Yes, yes.
It's board meeting attendance. As duly elected or appointed trustees, in order to represent the Harlandale community effectively and efficiently, trustees are expected to and commit to attending all board meetings, including regular monthly board meetings, board workshop meetings, and special called board meetings.
Plus, you guys know in the LSG model, we look at 70% and 80%. That's also one of the other items. And so it's any questions or comments? Everybody okay with that wording from Mr. Resendez? Mr. Moreno, on number 2 or the second paragraph.
Sure, if a trustee has a lack of attendance at board meetings, 2 consecutive or less than 90% in a calendar year, the board president or vice president, if it's the board president having attendance issues, shall meet in private individually with that trustee to address the lack of attendance.
Okay, and that kind of follows your procedure to start with the board president, then if it is she or he, then move to VP and our secretary. Third one, please, Ms. Carrillo.
If the lack of attendance at board meetings continues after addressed privately and individually, then the board president or any board member, along with obtaining a second signature, may request to address the concern as an individual agenda item in closed session, allowing the trustee an opportunity to explain why they have not attended board meetings.
And that's in statute on how one handles any kind of issue with board behavior. That's the common way to get something on the agenda and allow the board member opportunity to respond.
I would like to add to this because, yes, I am going to say I have missed some board meetings in the past, but I have also responded, or I have acquired information from Mr. Descendis. And Mr. Descendis is the one that has told me, well, yes, Ms. Carrillo, go ahead and you can step back, because in the past, there have been harsh board meetings. And, it's harsh and it affects my health. So I have spoken to him and I wish he were here, because at least I would be able to have a one-on-one, or at least have some sort of
He
answer.
actually said if we wanted to, we could call him in. So I don't know if that's necessary or not.
If we're expecting to do this and approve this tonight, maybe, because I am not, how can I say, comfortable with this.
Well,
And I say this because he has given me direction in the past.
right. Well, this language came from him. And so what I would suggest right now, this is a draft. And so if we need to address that, is perhaps let's leave it as is. And if you have suggested language, then we can send that to Ms. Cavazos and we can send it to Mr. Resendez. But this is his language. And so I think that stands outside the purview. I think that's been addressed for this year, and attendance has improved. So my thought is, could we move on for sake of other things we need and not bog down in this, not calling Mr. Resendez right now? I'm not trying to tell the board what to do, but just in terms of maybe trying to get through to the other items we need to
And I know Ms.
discuss.
Cavazos had it first, so you're welcome to speak first, ma'am. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, we have to keep in mind that this is also for future
That's right.
board members that
That's
are
right.
here.
I know we've had conversations, not necessarily with Mr. Resendez, but when censuring a board member, we have had those discussions. But they've always said, I mean, it's really kind of it's kind of like a hollow move, you know what I mean? Because you
Exactly.
really can't no one can remove them except,
That's right.
so the idea really is, what would that really do? That's what I really kind of would want Tony to kind of explain that part. Because if you're putting that into our board operating procedures, and we've had other things where it's not necessarily, I guess this would be aligned with conduct and maybe professionalism, but to me, it's more so like when it's like someone unruly, ridiculous, obnoxious, more than, because we've had that and we've had to have those discussions, and that person is literally having an issue with every person on this board. And we still couldn't do anything
Right.
to support ourselves, to show that we were not dysfunctional. It was a matter of one rogue member.
Right. The last two, I'll just tell you, that's out of statute. That's also in all board policies. That's how you deal with any kind of misbehavior on a board member. And so 3 and 4, that's just the common way. That's a common professional way in which to deal with it. That's not new language. I see it in all BOPs.
Madam
So-
Chair, real quick.
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
You just stated that it was out of statute.
It is in how you deal with board member behavior. Now, it's not it doesn't say verbatim that it's attendance. It could be misbehavior, as Mr. Moreno said, it could be misbehavior in a meeting. It could be falling down drunk at a school event, whatever. It could be any of those things and not here. I didn't mean that, but just an example. So it is.
Mr. Monte, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, no, that she's very correct. And Mr. Moreno's also very correct. We did have a board member and I was board president at the time and we had to reprimand him. And we had to take away his rights from asking for requests.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to bring back the request thing, because sometimes we do need to find out who's requesting this.
Mhm.
Because this man was making staff do so much work
Yes, sir.
and asking for booklets of
Yes, sir.
information, copies. And, so
Right.
that's why I wanted to go back to that issue.
Yes, sir.
Because it is very important that sometimes we do need to know who it is because of situations that we had in the past. And if we're doing this for the future, not only for the
That's
present,
right.
we need to make sure that we're very cautious that what we put on there, not nobody knowing who the person is,
Yes, sir.
because it is very difficult. And unfortunately, I was the board president at the time, and I had to reprimand him
Right.
to the point to where, he literally called my house and went to my house and it got pretty ugly. So,
Yes, sir.
so we need to be cautious on this, but I agree with this.
Okay, so the last two steps are exactly out of board operating procedures all over the state on how one deals with censuring a board member. Do you mind to read that one, Mr. Muncher, that last one, please? Your microphone, sir.
That's cool. If the explanation is not satisfactory to the trustees and the absence continues, the board may censor the board member not to attend attending board meetings, and may also take action to limit the board members' travel expenses approval for board training charges.
Mhm. Okay. All right. All right. So are you okay to leave this for right now in draft form, and we're okay to move from that? And then I know a couple of you said there were a couple of other things. I think I have one more thing. And then looking back at your page 8 and 9 in the old one, I don't know where it is in the revised. So somebody may have to help me under recitation of the. Well, it was in the old one. I guess we removed it in the edit because we talked about removing it, right? So I brought this back to you after discussion with Ms. Limon and Ms. Cavazos, just to ask you to be sure, because it sounded that there was sort of a mixed bag related to, do you want to recite the board constraint or not? And so that's my question. Keep the board constraint and the order that the members were to read it. That was in your old BOP. Is there value in that? Is there value in the public hearing? You read that. My other suggestion is, as I visited with Ms. Limon and Ms. Cavazos, was to offer, would it be productive for you to call it the LSG Leadership Reflection? And a person could read the vision, inspiring our students to be the change. And then they might say something like this in bullet 3. I've observed or noticed in my board book that students from McCollum High School did X, Y, and Z in mathematics or whatever. And it supports our LSG goal under college, career, military readiness. Something that, is there value in that? And how it might help focus the audience on your Lone Star governance goals of literacy, math, CCMR, or would you rather just leave it out? So I'm just asking your thoughts. Is there value in this for you as board members? Yes, sir.
There's much more, sorry for interrupting, but there's much more value in the latter part versus me just saying a blanket statement, because I can genuinely say and authentically say, I understand and I'm agreeing with this. And it aligns with the goal. So I'm okay with the vision. I know we used to read the vision, and I think that's a collaboration, a combination of what you guys heard from us. And I think that would be well enough for us to represent, anything that we can align with our goals.
So you're thinking vision and goals for you, Mr. Moreno, is that?
Like you said, I mean, here inspiring our children to be the change and then, or inspiring our students to be the change and then reading, oh, I just want to give special kudos to our such and such school that has done this, or our such and such student that exemplified another achievement with their certification.
Right. Of course, it's tied to academic accolades, tied to our goals. And so other thoughts, do any of the other of you want something crafted that you could see in draft form before you adopt it? Yes, no? With what Mr. Moreno said,
I agree with Mr. Moreno. What he would just say.
related to vision,
Yes.
related to mission, and or to LSG goals, or yes, ma'am, Ms. Ortiz?
Well, folks, if you think that people in the audience aren't paying attention to what we're saying up here, they are. Yesterday, if you noticed during the individuals that were saying things prior to the meeting with public comment, did y'all notice how many times they cited that a family?
Family. Mhm.
Yes. And then did y'all listen to the Trinity students say that? So if we think that because we're just saying it and their words and have no meaning, I believe people are paying attention to what we say, and we need to mean it. We need to mean what we say and say what we mean. And that's all I'm going to say on this.
Okay, so are you thinking then in terms of, we might call it LSG leadership moment, and it's tied somehow to your LSG goals, but it would be incumbent on you as board members, if we do that, to find how did it tie in with math, CCMR, literacy prior to the meeting. It's one more thing for you to think about, but public is noticing. Mission, vision.
That's just my opinion, my personal opinion. When I heard all of those individuals speak, I was hearing them repeat things that we have said when we're here. And then when I heard the Trinity students, I said, they are paying attention. I mean, I'm thinking it, I didn't say that, but I mean, I'm thinking it. So for me, that's just me.
Okay. So here's a suggestion to limit our time on this. If you're okay, I can get with Ms. Cavazos and we craft something in draft form for you to look at before this is adopted. You can say thumbs up, thumbs down.
Well, real quick, Madam Chair.
Yes,
if
sir.
I may
Oh, I'm
just-
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna state something real quick. Can we get together with Ms. Mariana and whoever's gonna make the statement that week? Present one of the students that's being recognized for not only, but his academic achievement, and then say our statement, and then present the student with his little award. Wouldn't that connect it even more to what you're bringing up
Well, it
at the
would
last
have-
bullet?
It would have to
Oh.
be related to the goals. It
Yeah,
would
that's
have
what I
to
mean,
be. We need to remember that one of your exit criteria is related to board recognitions and related to when that's done and how that's done. And so, right now, could we focus just on the statement and not on the recognition right now? And just maybe, yes, bring back a draft to you to look at. Is that okay? And then if it's not to your liking, we'll craft something different, because it does sound like most of you are in favor of something related to mission goals or et cetera, but not necessarily to the constraint. But it wouldn't keep one of you if you wanted to read the constraint. It wouldn't stop you from doing that if you chose to. That could be another option. So, okay, one more thing here on developing the agendas. Here is a suggestion on adding to agenda items. Just a reminder, because one of your exit criteria is how you do student recognition and what should be done ahead of time. And so here's a suggested agenda item. My words, not Mr. Resendez. Any agenda item for student recognition will be related to the board's 3 LSG academic goals. We know that that's one of your exit criteria, so this would be added to your BOP. Student recognition for academic awards, even if it's academic, but it's unrelated to LSG, or non-academic awards will occur prior to board meetings and the call to order. And the reason I listed that is because that was your exit criteria, GPM 3.2. Just as a reminder, does that need to be in the BOP, or you know that that's part of it related to your exit criteria?
I guess just to be clear, I mean, so are we saying that we're going to be permitted to do that, or what? Just to be clear on exactly what the terminology means.
I'm trying to state there that if there is a student that's being recognized for CCMR tied to your goal, that could occur in a meeting. The problem is you have 2 high schools and you might have 400 kiddos. So that could be a huge task and a huge staff overload, because we talked about those kinds of things happening
I
at
think
the
Mr.
campus.
Soto knows which ones those are, because
Yes.
I think he shared that, like, these are some prestigious honors or achievements, and I think Mr. Soto can clear that for us, or maybe even Ms. Casey, in terms of these are things that nobody does. Because I mean, again, I think we've all talked about it. It's not necessarily just doing the status quo, but more so what are the unique achievements that have been accomplished by our kids, so we can recognize that, or things that don't happen often. You know, if one of our students gets admitted into, Harvard, I would think that would align, right? Or no?
Probably not. Probably not.
Like based on SAT scores, or
Well,
right?
if it is tied to CCMR, and it might be.
So, or maybe a kid that has, some. Those are just things to consider. I guess I don't know what the caveats would be.
And Ms. McAnally, I think that we are still unclear as to a clear definition of student recognition. Because if we recognize an athlete, it should not be in the meeting recognition, because we're recognizing him as a student athlete. Although that student athlete has to be in good standing academically to even be an athlete, we're not allowed to recognize that athlete or athletes after we clock in to the meeting.
According to,
So I think we really need that clear definition. Only if and when blank can we recognize them after the meeting has called to order.
right,
Any other reason, it has to be at 5:45.
right. All your athletes that have scored a certain level can be recognized for academics, but it's not related to your Lone Star governance goals. And so that kind of recognition, although it is academic, it is not tied to your goals. And so, yeah, that's time that would not count according to time tracker. Yes, you're correct.
So then it would be like the all academic teams wouldn't.
It would be like what, sir?
Like, we know how we have our district, whatever sport, all
Yes.
academic teams wouldn't apply to
Right.
this, right?
Yes,
Even though we hear the word and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it does seem to make sense to us.
Yeah.
It does. It does seem to make sense to us.
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure what what we can do to make sure we understand,
Right,
like Ms. Cavazos
Right.
mentioned.
This is a hard pill to swallow. I'll just tell you, for all LSG schools. And I will also tell you that we coaches have argued about it. We just have, but it hasn't gotten us anywhere. So.
Yeah,
um,
because
so-
I know I wasn't sure this with Mr. Resendez, but I know at the district I work at, they're doing attendance, they're doing AR, they're doing
Yes.
all those things. And I'm like, how does that make sense when we're being told over here? And they're also under a conservatorship, and you look at their agenda for tomorrow and you'll be like, so they're recognizing the Cardinal Spotlight, you're recognizing the Cardinal VIP, they're recognizing the attendance, the
It'd
top
be
attendance.
interesting to see their time tracker and
Well,
how
I
they're
mean, it
counting
would be,
that.
because I mean, like, that they have a conservator there.
Right.
So that's why I'm just like confused sometimes.
Yes, sir. I understand. So, So is there any wordsmithing, or do we need this? Since it's already in your exit criteria, is it unneeded? This is just a reminder, just to let you know, we don't need to be adding recognition that's not tied to LSG at this point, if that makes sense.
Madam Chair, in my opinion, I think we just leave it just as a reminder. So that
Okay, as a
we can
reminder.
always go back and for the new, for future,
Okay.
as well.
Okay, so,
And once again, we always come back and revisit our BOP, so depending from, this time frame to then, let's see how it works. It works for us.
So-
Either yes or
thumbs up, thumbs down.
I guess, Mr. Soto, before I give my thumbs up, are you comfortable with helping us with that? Or would you feel like that's something that's kind of more difficult? Because if not, I don't want to put more stress on you.
Hmm.
Yeah, basically, Mr. Moreno is, was trying to make some eye contact with Miss Casey, but, I think she dazed off on us. But just like our presentation last night, this will be an example that I believe Miss McAnally is trying to guide us to. You saw our kindergarten students exceeding the
Yes,
goal that the board put there. And
yes,
so what we would do is say, you know what, Collier, since we're at Collier, let's say we're at Collier. All right, Collier, give us your kindergarten class that was a top-notch kindergarten
right.
class. So
right.
the board can recognize them, that they reached an LSG goal that the board put a progress measure on, and they've exceeded it. And we would get that class to show up that evening, and you guys would get
Yeah.
credit for LSG.
That's right.
So I
That's right.
believe that every time we're doing board operating procedures, you guys are adding more work to us, but
It's
all right. But that would be something that I see, Mr. Moreno, is us tying into those LSG goals. And we're doing it at the beginning of the year, and we'll see what class.
Yeah, and I wouldn't expect it every month either, sir, because I
Right.
know things sometimes are slower than others and stuff.
Right,
And based on data, sometimes the data's not there
that's
till
right.
maybe we do a beginning of the year, like you said, middle of the year, and then end of year,
Yes, sir.
like 3.
Yep.
Mhm.
Right, we'd have to be selective. I mean.
Yes,
w-
yes.
Right, Miss Casey, I mean, that's kind of,
justify why they do the 5.5 and why they do it during. I think that's something up to the board. I think we want to articulate that. to the
Mm-hmm,
parents.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So for future, it was the suggestion of Ms. Carrillo, put it in there for the future. It could be removed in a year if it's not or reworded. Yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, I see a couple of, okay.
It's just my opinion that we don't need to have that in board operating procedures. We already have it in the exit criteria.
We do, yes, so. We saw from the majority of you, you said include it for future, and then yes, no. Okay,
I was gonna say, I think it would be repetitive. And if we do have to address it, then we come back and address it. If we notice that although it's already part of our exit criteria goal, if we're not complying with it, well, then we can address it to make it more clear or to add it in there for reinforcement.
But we could also use this as a tool, because then we can, the goal that, or the discrepancy that Miss Casey said is, people are gonna be like, why is it 5:45 versus 6:15?
that's
And
right.
then you could be like, well, let's reference our board operating procedures, which is
Yes.
this. And that's why it's related, has to be related to our goals. But that doesn't diminish the accomplishments of our kids.
You can
regardless.
point them to that BOP and then, and that you have agreed to it as a body corporate. And so it is there, because how many of them are going to see the exit criteria? They may or may not look at that, but it does give you a place to point them. So add it is what I saw
We
thumbs.
can redirect them to that.
The majority said yes. Yeah. All right. So we're going to review exit criteria, but some of you wanted to review the, I believe the request for information on who suggests an item. What page was that, Mr. Mancha? And guys, we need to truncate this as quickly as we can so that we can get to other items. What page number, please? Page 9 in old copy, and information requests by board members between meetings, page 9 of old copy, and page 8, I believe, in the revised copy. Request by board members, and in the revised copy, it had stated that the name, no disclosure of name of the
Yes,
requesting
ma'am. I
member.
think Ms. Cavazos had brought up that, we should not,
I'm so sorry. Can you guide me? What are we
page
looking at?
9 on the
On the
revised.
revised page
Yes, ma'am,
9?
correct.
Oh, inquiries concerning, no, not that.
Right above it, right above it. The top paragraph, it
Oh,
actually
yes, yes,
starts
yes,
on
yes,
page,
yes. Okay, thank
yeah.
you. Yes. Go.
starts on page 8.
Roman numeral 5. Am I? Yeah, Roman numeral 5.
On the top of page 9.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Mr. Mancha.
Okay, my concern was with it, was that I didn't know whether last week we can ask a lot of questions or bring up past issues that had happened. But we had that issue with one board member
Yes, sir.
that started asking for a lot of stuff.
So you,
And I
wanna-
finally asked the superintendent at the time, who's this guy asking for all this paperwork?
right,
And
Right.
when I was told who it was, I said, well, how much time is it costing us?
yes,
And he
sir.
goes, well, Mr. Hernandez is running around for the last 2 weeks trying to get paperwork for him. And he's
Right.
calling every day,
Yes, sir.
constantly. And I said, okay, well, and then I talked to, at the time we had Woody Wilson as our attorney. It wasn't Mr. Resendez. So I asked Woody, what can I do? And he goes, well, you need to reprimand him. So I said, okay, so how do I do that? And then he told me how to follow. So we sat down one-on-one
Yes, sir.
first. He goes, you gotta have a one-on-one conversation with him
Yes,
since
sir.
you're the board president. So I did that. Well, he
Right,
disagreed. He stormed out, said, I don't need to effing talk to you. I said, okay. So he walked out. So then the next meeting, I set it up with the superintendent and myself.
okay. May I stop you there? We
Yes.
don't really need the past history. I think everybody knows there was an issue. So. Yes, sir. I
Well,
was,
anyway,
yes, sir.
getting back, so now when we're saying we cannot disclose who's asking the question, then it kind of sets us back to where I can go and ask for all this stuff and nobody can ever know that it's
Yes, sir.
me.
Well, and
because
and
it's
you start to think about transparency.
Yes.
Is what I hear you
Yeah,
saying.
yes,
Mr.
that's what I'm
Mancha,
worried about.
the transparency. And so, I guess,
Because we're not gonna be here forever.
right, right. So as you, do we want to take a quick break? I see people getting antsy, so I'm thinking maybe, and then we'll come back and talk. That gives you time to think a minute that, if names are not disclosed, is that transparency to you as a board? Is that transparency to the public? Is it hiding behind anonymity? Those can be one side of it. The other side of it is if I'm a board member and everyone disagrees with me, then, my name's out there. So I guess that's the other side of it. Any other thought, Ms. Cavazos, on?
Yes, I mean, let's take a break and then we'll catch up. because
Okay.
That way
Okay.
we're gonna
Let's
continue
let's
speaking.
let's do what, 5 minutes?
Yes.
I have 20 till, so be back at 15 till. Does that
Yes,
work for
and so
everybody?
it is 7:41, 7:40? 41. We're taking a short recess at 7:41 for 5 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we are back from recess. It is 7:48. We took a little bit more than 5 minutes. Okay, so can we continue, Ms. McAnally, please?
Absolutely. So we were revisiting reasons for names to be disclosed. One thought was tied to transparency. That's one side of it. Is there a downside of that? Is there an opposite point of view that needs to be?
So I agree with Mr. Mancha when it comes to board members requiring reports. Yes. However, maybe there could be a part A and B, like we've done in the other ones. What I don't want, and this is just me, is when I address Mr. Soto in an email with a question or questions related to agenda items or district related, I don't want to know which board member is submitting that question. I think that is a communication between the board member and Mr. Soto. Now, he shares it with the answer with all the board, but that's not something he shares out in the community. I think it's a gray area to make assumptions of that question may lead to a particular way of voting on something. And I just think we have practiced, you submit your questions to the superintendent and the answer is going to be shared with that person that asked the question and all the other board members. It's a board member requested, made these questions or requested this information. More so because a lot of those are agenda related. And I just think I should not have to let everybody know what questions I have. I don't want to make the assumption, oh, that was Ms. Carrillo. Yes, that's her question. I don't. I want that to be private. I wanted to keep that private.
So this is not made public. So we're not keeping any information from the public. This is only questions that you 7 would submit. So here's my other question to you. Is it possible then that if that is disclosed, then I might know, well, Mr. Moreno is going to vote this way. So I'm going to call him because I saw, or Mr. Mancha is going to vote this way. So it may add pressure to the
And
board.
that's what I don't want.
Gotcha.
I think we're all entitled to ask questions, obviously. And sometimes I see those and I'm like, oh, that was a really good question. I got an answer that I never even thought I needed, but now I know. But I don't need to know who submitted that.
So
I
this
just need to know the question and the answer that's provided to us.
So this is not a lack of transparency, as I said earlier. And back to the request for records and et cetera, that was the problem in the past. That's in statute now. It has to be disclosed. And so that's taken care of. So that's off the table. So if it were a board member abusing requests for open records, et cetera, that is kept up now. We know, okay, so-and-so has requested 4,500 pages. So that's totally off the page. So I guess my question then, to kind of truncate or shorten the discussion, is how many of you are okay for leaving it as is so that you have that ability to not disclose how you might be voting based on just the question? How many of you are okay there and are not okay with it not being disclosed?
Go ahead, Ms. Carrillo.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead,
If
Mr. Mancha.
it's a question that is being produced to all of us, it's not really a private question.
But you don't know who it's coming from. You don't know who asked that question.
No, but it doesn't decide how you're gonna vote. That's what I'm understanding. I mean, if I ask Mr. Soto, how did the policy get across? And then he shares it with all of us. That's not telling nobody how I'm gonna vote or how the vote is gonna go. It's just a question.
I think it's the assumption of it, Mr. Mancha, that I
Well,
don't
that's what I don't
want.
understand. What's the
Mhm.
assumption that you're gonna vote one way because you asked a question?
Well, I think it's the inclination of it. Mrs. Ortiz, I keep interrupting you. I apologize.
My feeling is, what does that have to, why do you have to know who asked the question? It's none of your business. You have the question, you have the answer. Why do you have to know? I'm
No,
just saying, we're
I'm
all
just- I'm
share,
just saying-
we all get the same question. We all get the answer. Why does anyone have to take that extra
Not-
step
Now,
to
once
find
did
out
I say I wanted
who
to know
asked-
who asked the
who
question?
asked the
I'm saying,
question?
why
I
is
don't,
it private?
that's just putting extra work on the superintendent. It's one less phone call. I just don't get why anyone, if we get the question and we get the answer, why does it matter who asked it? That's my feeling. That's
Madam
just
Chair?
me.
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
And then why does it matter if we don't have, we put our names on it on transparency? If it doesn't matter, why not just put our names on it for board members' requests? And like that, we leave administration out of it completely. And we already know who produced the question. Yes, because I
Because
do
it
ask.
doesn't matter.
I do
doesn't
ask on
matter.
reports.
But we have, but
And just to be on the safe side, if we don't get it on this 7, we can easily go to open records and request it there. So either way, we're gonna acquire that information.
then let's do that. Do the extra step. Whoever wants to be nosy enough, then do the extra step to go to file an open records request.
I
But
don't agree
I
with
don't
that.
think so. No, I don't.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, I wasn't going there. I was.
I know, Mr. Mancha.
stating-
It's just that there are some of us in this board that have a tendency to pick and choose. And I don't think that's right. I don't think if it has never been produced since this board has been a board, why are we going to open those gates? The reason I have to make the change is because you call and you inquire, Ms. Carrillo, and then you put a lot of pressure on Mr. Soto when he says, I can't give you that information. Well, I don't want the names on there. No, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. Exactly, and they're watching, so we have to be in attendance and we have to be accountable of what. I don't want the names there. We haven't used anybody's names.
Okay, let me point out one of the reasons that I see the privacy of the board gives you freedom so that if there is someone that might have a tendency to intimidate you as a board member, it does keep intimidation from occurring. So if I'm being intimidated by a board member and I'm like, man, I'm not going to ask Mr. Soto that, and I may have a great question, but I feel intimidated, this at least gives you the freedom. And this doesn't have anything to do with transparency because it's not public information, so to speak. So that let me just say it from that objective viewpoint. It's not like you're withholding information from the public. This is just trying to keep the board operating in synergy and unity so that if there's differing viewpoints, it doesn't say, well, here's this one, here's Joe over here who's disagreeing with Mary, and here we go again on Joe and Mary. It at least eliminates that. So I'm guessing thumbs up to leave as is with names not disclosed. How many thumbs up do I have? I see 4, so it's 4. And how many thumbs down?
But if I may, Madam.
Yes, sir.
Or Ms. McNally. One thing that I've always kind of had a toggle with, I guess, back and forth when being in the leadership role is a lot of the information I can just refer back to my emails. And I do that. I mean, I was sending it even in a question if I sent to Mr. Soto based off of the such and such date, because I want people to also look through their stuff and reference prior meetings. And I mean, I know at some point all of us have been involved, like, did we have that or not? But a lot of times our information's already there. So I don't know, that's something we could consider going forward or maybe come back to later and saying maybe Mr. Soto can just say, reference this email from such and such date,
Then he has to go look for it. That's right.
Well, he doesn't have to produce anything else other than look for it.
Bless his heart.
So,
Can I just say one more?
just because
Okay.
it's easy to review stuff.
Okay, it sounds as if we're leaving it as is. Okay,
I'm just wanting to say that if you have a problem with asking or other board members knowing, maybe we shouldn't ask those questions or put those requests out there. it just gives us kind of like, I would say, we govern ourselves because this is the first time that we have ever governed ourselves.
I know, but you're implying we should limit ourselves in asking questions that we want answers
You're
for,
correct. If
to our superintendent. That means at any point, if I have a question about an agenda item or a department or the practice, then I'm not going to be able to ask that question? Because we're encouraged, our conservator encourages, ask questions, send an email, ask questions.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree.
Okay, so, but I don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it to me? You're saying then that we should limit ourselves to the questions we ask?
I'm gonna say an example, okay? At the beginning of the year, I requested a vendor list. I got a booklet like this thick, okay? I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting it. A few months ago, there was another vendor list that came out. And I did, and it was like only a page long. I did refer to Mr. Soto, hey, sir, what was the difference? And he did tell me the difference. I wasn't specific enough, okay? But I did ask him, oh, and so and so. Okay, big deal. Did I reach out to that individual? No, I did not. So what makes the difference if we all get that? And if we do have questions, at least we know what individual asked that question. Say, I wanted to come to you. I can ask, oh, well, Ms. Cavazos, you asked this, what do you mean on that? Or have some sort of, I'm trying to, us as 7, a team of 8, Mr. Soto and Ms. Patty do not to be involved in this. These are our questions they are providing to us.
But they're providing to all of us the same question and all of us the same answer. So
what
it doesn't
difference-
matter. I
You're
just say,
right. I just-
don't put the name out there. I'm
I'm-
telling you, it's a
yes.
bad practice.
And I do say yes.
I'm
Well,
going to interrupt and let me truncate the time and interrupt because there's a disagreement and we already have 4 people saying, yes, it's okay as is. And let me just point out, I mentioned that someone could feel bullied or intimidated by that. The other thing that could happen, you could be straw voting around it. If you see, oh, well, I see that Joe agrees with me. I'm going to go talk to Joe and Mary and see if I can't line them up to vote with me. So the fact of anonymity does prevent that kind of thing where a board would not be working in unity. So I'm just going to end with that. It gives some protection from that kind of thing happening and violating Open Meetings Act, which that actually would do. So I'm just going to go with the law on that. Now I'm
Thank
going to
you.
ask you to look in your packet from Miss Patty and try and find your criteria of the exit criteria that was issued to you. Simply because I want to help you stay on track with what are the things we have to do. And I've lost mine, but I know I have it up here somewhere. So I have it here. I'll just go to no, I can't go away. So looking at exit criteria 3, the reason I want to point that out is exit criteria 3. Does everyone have that handout in their hand? Except for the presenter. So, but I have it up here. So raise your hand if you haven't found it yet.
Found it. I just found
Okay,
it.
good. All right. So exit criteria 3 says under that you will have 35% of your time focused on student outcomes as indicated by the GPMs that have been presented to you guys. And I figured for a 2-hour meeting, that's 45 to 60 minutes. And so that's our goal. So when Ms. Ortiz is reading those student outcome minutes to us, and we're in 17 up to about 20-ish, I think you've been at 25 one time. So we've got to start thinking in terms of how can you either shorten your planning meetings or how can you increase your discussions around LSG? And I want to debrief last night. When the GPMs were presented for the EC campuses, Mr. Luna asked a great question around the classroom, the teacher's children's classroom. And he asked, okay, how did this classroom compare to this classroom? Those are the kinds of questions that promote inquiry. Then we went off on enrollment. Enrollment is not a part of the goal. You have to have the kids to meet the goal, but more time was spent on enrollment than was spent on student achievement related to the GPMs. So when you start to think about, well, how do we increase that? I think only 3 of you have the new booklet. So I'm going to tell you that in the 2023 booklet, and perhaps you guys can get it before we meet in the next quarter. There is a page in there that gives types of questions that you ask. And so a question like Mr. Luna asked is the kind of question that allows information to flow back and forth between the board. He asked another important question 2 or 3 meetings ago when he said, oh, C is already at 50% and that's our goal. We've reached it. How are we going to, what else is going to happen? Those are the kinds of questions that you could ask. The other thing you could ask would be related to student groups. How are our African-American students compared to our Hispanic students, compared to our Anglo students? How are they performing? Those are the kinds of questions that you can ask. And so when you start to think in terms of how do we expand this and how do we meet the goal that's been set for you by TEA, is thinking about those questions. And it's in the new manual, the new LSG manual, that on the front of the cover, it's going to say 2023. And so if you look at the front of your cover down here where it says school year, if yours has school year 21-22, you don't have the questions. If you have school year 22-23, you're going to have the kinds of questions that you would ask around student groups, around student performance, how those kinds of questions. And so right here on the blue line, for me, I can't read it. Maybe you guys can with younger eyes. So if you have 21-22, then we would need for you to have the newer manual and go to 22-23. And we can talk about that in the next quarter. But that's the way that you're able to expand that time. And the other thing that I would tell you guys as a board, some of you are going to need to police each other around that. And when you segue off of talking about the GPM and go to enrollment, is remind others, guys, I'd like to be talking about the GPM and just bring that back, the conversation back to goals. Is it important that you know about enrollment? It is, but let me remind you, some of those questions, the presenter's not prepared to talk about. That was not what was, and some of those questions might be fielded better by being asked privately to Mr. Soto, so staff is not unprepared. She did a great job. I thought she did a fabulous job. Yes, ma'am.
And
Ms.
I will
Cavazos.
address, I was one that asked about enrollment because.
Well,
her
everybody did.
Her
Yes.
presentation had enrollment.
Yes, it
We've
did.
enrolled, so I
It
figured I could
absolutely
ask
did.
about what she's presenting. That
Yes.
slide had
It did.
enrollment.
It did. And thank you for reminding me. I had absolutely forgotten that. You're exactly right. So she did lead us that direction. Absolutely. So thank you for that reminder. My apology. It was there. My apologies. You're exactly right. But yeah, but that's one of the things, even, the best that you can do is we'll come back and revisit this so that you'll know the types of questions. So that's one exit criteria. Exit criteria 1 is tied to financial. That's not my area to remind you about. And exit criteria 3.2, we've already talked about venues and student recognition. We've already mentioned that. And then on 3.3, that's tied to the industry-based certifications and increasing to 66%. I've already talked about this. You guys start to think, what can we do to get to 45 minutes for SOGs? And it's incumbent. Ms. Ortiz said it last time. We've got to look at how much time is being spent in the planning meeting, in the workshop. And she is aware of it because she, like Miss Casey, Miss Juarez, and I, we are keeping the minutes, whether I'm at your meeting or not. I'm watching, keeping minutes, trying to help you reach this goal. And so exit criteria goal 2, I highlighted one of the things we're doing tonight, which is your BOP, the second item 2.2. But Also, we need to do the quarterly meetings, and those quarterly meetings, the next one's between June and August. So I would suggest you start to think now, let's get the date on the calendar so that we all know when it is and we have it firmed up. So somewhere between June and August will be the next quarter, and our fourth quarter is September through November. So those are the LSG training times that have been added for the TEA exit criteria. Notice the last one, if there is any change in membership on the board, there's some things that will need to be done by the district and or by me if I can assist with that. And that is training for board candidates, the BOP training, as well as some LSG update, and then getting them trained the 2 days. So I want to talk about Tracker, and Mr. Morano had brought that up, and I want to
know
just
you-
walk you. Oh,
I
I'm
just-
sorry.
Because, I mean, this is what happens a lot, is we get to the tail end, and then when we actually this actually comes across as one of the most important pieces, because now I'm confused.
Okay,
So I'm gonna backtrack a
okay,
little bit, because what I'm trying to understand now, and it's gonna relate to that eventually as well, is, now we're going to a new manual, like consistently it changes.
I know.
And then that isn't conveyed to us in a proper and appropriate fashion. First. Second is we're discussing our presentations. So for clarity's sake, can you enlighten us and share with me? So we've done pre-K a couple of times.
Yes,
We got
sir.
it presented in December. We got it presented last night. We've done CCMR a couple of times. It's been presented, I think, like in November, then was presented probably even in February. So you're saying anything, when you're tracking something, that presentation that Mr. Soto has put in place for us there, if we're asking a question and it doesn't align to what you feel is appropriate for the LSG model, it's not getting counted within sometimes they were there for like 2 hours going over a presentation. Is that what you're telling me?
It not on the ones that are tied to the GPMs. No, sir. If they're tied to GPMs, that's
But the whole,
correct.
I mean, in some conversations, for example, like me going over DRA and explaining what it was and how it relates, that isn't a part of.
It's tied to reading.
So it is.
It's tied to reading.
And
Yes, sir.
I know it was shared, like, it was like, oh, you shouldn't be saying that. Or
No,
trying to show
no.
like, hey, letter recognition is how it works, is how it aligns. This is to what level these kids should be going to.
No,
So that should have aligned. Now,
yes.
also with like CCMR, there was a question one time when I was just trying to get clarity on, is this the appropriate goal that we're approving? That interaction with Miss Casey didn't,
Oh, yes, it
Now-
does. Yes, you're
okay.
talking about a goal. Absolutely.
okay,
Yes,
because like
sir.
those are things I'm trying to figure out now, like the way you said, it's like, well, shoot, it's
Yeah.
not really related to it, so it's not gonna count for me asking a question, because is it also what you're implying is that we should spend additional time asking questions to expand the amount of credit we get for that time?
Correct.
Because all you've been saying for the last 2 years is to limit your questions. And so to me, I'm just like, what? Is our left talking to our right, or what's going on? Because there's always instances where I'm like, I have to curb myself from asking a question, because it's not going to be, you're going to say it's not inquiry, or it's going to be interpreted as not inquiry,
Oh,
even though it can relate to it. Like, to me, it's always have to just stop.
Hmm.
So like, that's what I'm trying to just clear up right now, is just you're encouraging us to ask questions when it's related to an LSG presentation.
I was just giving the example that of the questions that Mr. Luna crafted, that those were related to the goals. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but again, we got 3 minutes.
So
That's not
That's,
gonna,
that's true, sir.
so like, that's what I'm telling you. I'm like, where does this make sense then? How are we ever gonna attain it? Because we can only ask for an additional maybe 2 minutes.
So-
Like, that's not gonna. be
Well, the
feasible.
hope is that 5 times 7 is 35 minutes of asking questions related to that. So that's my hope. I'm not here to tell you how to do that. My
You're supposed to
my hope
guide
is
us to
I'm
get
trying
there.
to guide you.
So
I'm
that's
doing
what
the
I'm
best
saying.
I
Now it's
can. I'm
something
sorry.
different.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's something different. So I'm just,
So,
I'm asking you that.
I guess the problem becomes this notion of tracking time. And so I just wanted to show you where you started, and then I want to show you how it's figured. This is where you started in 2019. This at the 16, you were at 16. This is where you were in 21, right before you started doing your planning meetings. So notice the scores, and I can't read it from this far away, but I believe the score is a 60. I'm going to have to move over. So, excuse me. 64, yes. It's a 64. And so that's right prior to your adding planning meetings. I believe you added them in October of 21. So I just did a snapshot so you could see what happened. Then by December 22, you're in the 70 range. So has it affected your overall score? It has not. It has not. Your minutes are still not, quote, growing, but your overall score has continued to improve. And notice your minutes down at the bottom of this form, your student outcome minutes are 12.9. And so had you had one less meeting, then those minutes would have gone up because it's divided by the total number of minutes in meetings that month. I don't set the criteria. I don't do anything there. I apologize that I don't, but this is in 22. You were in the 70s. And then the one that you voted on last night, we're at 17 student outcome minutes. And notice you're still in the 70 range. So your scores are good scores and you continue to grow, but the minutes spent on student outcomes. And so back to Ms. Moreno's question. So we're to ask questions or we're not to ask questions. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to tell you the only way that you can increase, there's only two ways to increase, either ask more questions around student outcomes or reduce how many meetings you have. I don't know what else to tell you. Those are the only ways that you change that score. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Go
Ms.
ahead.
Carrillo.
So you're telling us that the more meetings that we have, it hurts us because of the meetings? We have so many.
Well,
meetings
it's an
in
average.
1 month.
Yes, ma'am. It's an average. So they add up the total number of meeting minutes. Your closed session is pulled out. Citizen communication is pulled out. And Miss Patty and Miss Casey and Ms. Ortiz and I, we all calibrate that according to the formula that we're given. And we do the very best we can to apply what category over on the left-hand side does it fall in, doing our very best to be fair and to meet the criteria. So
I'm going to interrupt you.
yes, ma'am.
Ms. Carrillo, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, because you're right. The more meetings we have, the more it hurts us. However, when we didn't have that work session, we were then told you asked too many questions. The regular board meeting is taking too long. It's taking 4 or 5. We need to shorten that regular board meeting, to a decent time of beginning and end. Okay, at the workshop, but we're adding a workshop to eliminate long regular board meetings so that we can ask those questions at the work session, but it's still not improving our outcomes, which confuses me completely. It's like we're making no progress. If we eliminate the work session, well, then we're going to be asking questions at the regular board meeting.
That's
And
right.
it's impossible
To
for
get it
us
all
to
in.
get it in 2 hours.
So here's a
And so
question.
now so let's try to keep that regular board meeting at 2 hours
Mhm.
and add a work session. But the work session is now hurting us.
Well, no, because the special call board meetings are hurting us because we have, after the work session and regular board meetings, we still have like 3 or 4 respectfully, 3, maybe, let's just say 3.
But not in every month. It's only certain times of the year because we've needed it. If you look back, we actually don't have very many special call meetings. If we do, it's because we have to meet a certain deadline or timeline, or there's a reason behind it. So and this is just hypothetically, I may be completely wrong. Let's say we get rid of the work session. Okay, that's one less meeting a month. But let's be realistic. We should be able to ask questions at the regular board meeting, but then our meeting we're never going to aim at the goal of 2.5 hours or less.
So question, thinking about the work session, How long do they tend to be? Are they 1 hour, 2 hours, three? How long do they?
So
tend-
if I may add,
Yes,
because
sir.
because the idea is we never really get any credit for the work session. Mr. Soto purposely and intentionally is catering it to us getting our minutes on that regular call.
Right.
And what's been hindering us the last 5 months is that we've had an extensive amount of meetings due to the
Oh,
need of what
Yes.
we've been going through.
Yes.
And based off of that, that's inflated the number and
Absolutely.
created a misrepresentation of what we're doing with our time. And
Absolutely.
so those are things that, I mean, this week I've done, or this month, four,
Yeah.
like I can't even go out and, have to go and reach out to community members because I'm here.
Right.
And so
right.
these are things that are consciously on my mind,
Yes, sir.
but at the same time, it's like, I know it's necessary. It's required.
Yes,
It's
sir.
what we have to do.
Yes, sir.
And so with that part, that's why we can't get it, because
Yes.
Mr. Soto's trying to support us and saying, ideally, we should only have a work session and a regular called. And with that, it should even out to whatever
Yes,
percentage we
sir.
need.
Yes.
But we've unfortunately had to deal with outside factors
Absolutely.
to deal with these
That's exactly
3 to
right.
4 meetings a month.
And you had the bond, you have had,
We-
yes,
they've been-
absolutely.
They have
That's
been
true.
on a need basis. But
Absolutely.
we don't do that monthly,
We were
Yeah.
basing this in October or September. We would just have a work session and a meeting, but we're basing this practically, every time
Mhm.
we need something.
Yes. So here's a suggestion. When you guys meet for agenda for the planning session, think in terms, I don't know that you can, but think in terms of, is there anything related to student outcome goals or GPMs that can be added? Or is it just better for us to do the very best we can to limit the time at that meeting? I don't know what's even practical, but if that, I don't know what else to suggest. That's the only thing.
Ms.
But
Casey, you wanted to say something, Ms. Casey?
I'm sorry.
It's a ratio. So it's not only the time you're spending on outcomes, it's how much time you're spending on everything else.
Mhm.
That is a big contributing factor.
Yeah.
So that if it's 35 minutes for student outcomes, but you have enough time on every item and you're using that time, then even if you increase this by 30 minutes, this time is always going to offset. And
That's
that
right.
really is the issue of what I
Right.
see when I'm doing.
Right. Yes, it's the other items that are non-Lone Star governance and
So then
oftentimes.
let me ask this, Mr. Soto, how many of those items are we asking to be on the agenda?
Very rarely, Mr. Moreno,
Yeah.
the insurance survey,
Yeah.
there was one like the insurance survey that took quite
Yeah.
a bit the other night.
Yeah.
But what we can do, just trying to figure this out, and I know Ms. McAnally made a suggestion, is in the work session, is trying to eliminate some of those presentations that are not student outcomes. I know we remove them from the regular board meeting, but there are a lot of informational that we can just give out, and some of you guys do a fabulous job of reading HH. If we
Yeah.
can get some of that information in HH, and then if you have questions on that, we can communicate
Mhm.
with the next HH and eliminate some of those 30-minute presentations that we're having during the work session.
Mhm.
And so I'm just
Mhm.
trying to brainstorm on how we can get better.
And I appreciate these these three people, staff members in their working hard to do that. What we don't know how to correct. And so that's where the information is tonight. That's the whole purpose in it. And like I said, probably nobody at that dais is as aware of time. Of course, Miss Patty is, as Ms. Ortiz, because she tracks it every single time. So she knows, oh, wow, we're discussing way more over here, and so that's our goal, is to think about that. So when you look at this monitoring report and you have it, since y'all have the older manual, you'll find the monitoring report in the older manual on, I was just going to show you the possibilities of, let me see if I can find where it used to be on page. Where did I put it? It's in the older manual on page 50, last year's manual. If you have the older one, I think a couple of you had the new one, and it should be fairly close to 50. But it's what's there on the screen. Notice that some of the kinds of things that I was talking about that Mr. Luna was discussing last night was comparing classrooms or whatever campuses. This monitoring report kind of shows that at the bottom, campus 1, campus 2, those kinds of things that are related perhaps to the SAT, the ACT, the industry-based certifications. Also notice over on the left side, and I don't know that your data is available, to have the trend line. That kind of helps. Then there are questions you can ask related to that or to the student groups. It will all depend on the software that the district uses. And so Ms. Casey and I have been having some conversations around that. Page 50 is not y'all's page. You may have to look in your table of contents. I don't know. I saw some of you had 2016. It's which one, Mr. Moreno? 36? Is that what? Okay. All right. So this is not an exemplary kind of example. It's just that's kind of a thing that you can start to see. Yeah, we could ask some questions around that if we had something similar. It doesn't have to be like this. Ms. Casey has some ideas tied to that. There is also and I'm just walking you through the manual. You also have in your packet, Superintendent's Office, October board meeting time tracker. And this is a sample out of your actual district on what did the October board meeting cost, according to Miss Patty. Now, what I see is there are some things not set up here and figured out, or like the boardroom prep, set up, take down, all of that. IT hours are not figured in, IT staff here. So there are some things that are not. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's by department. Okay, thank you. Oh, now I see. So second page is $2,000, yes, by department. First page is $1,000 by department. Okay, and then the next page, oh my goodness, yeah, she gave us a great deal of detail. And so the grand total, yes, so the grand total cost. Okay. Yeah. So so it looks to me like it could be somewhere over $10,000 if I'm doing the math right. If just real quickly, I don't know. And the only reason that LSG has a board do this is because it's an accountability piece, just to help us understand how do we streamline the planning meeting? How do we streamline the regular meeting so that we're getting the business done for the kids and for the community? But how do we make sure and that we're not, chasing a rabbit or whatever in a meeting? Questions related to that, because that's something that our goal is to shoot for doing this in July one more time and getting a grand total so you can kind of see what the planning meeting does cost. Questions, thoughts related to that? Yes, ma'am. All those handouts. Yes, ma'am. So I wanted to talk to you about you saw I don't see that I have the example. Did I skip it? Where did it go? I wanted to show you what you typically sign. That's the monthly tracker. This you typically sign. You notice that's the quarterly progress tracker. But what Miss Ortiz reports to you, you guys could see it last night, right? I couldn't see it on my streaming, but it looks different. And I want you to understand why. Look at the top of this one. This is called a quarterly progress tracker.
That's the one I address.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Every quarter.
Yes, ma'am.
And the one Miss Ortiz addresses, that's the monthly
That's
one.
the monthly, and we just call that time tracker. And so if you have 4 meetings, then Miss Patty, Miss Ortiz, Miss Casey, and Miss Linda have 4 of those that we compile to get to 1 month. So if you have 4 meetings over the 3 quarters, over the 3 months, we have 12 of those to go through to try and come up with the minutes. So it's pretty complicated process, but trying to keep us focused on student outcomes and helping people be efficient around the business that you're doing is all important business. I'm not saying that anything you don't do is not important business. It is. But how do we truncate, shorten the time that we spend talking about buildings or whatever it might be, the other items, and get us back to student outcomes? And so that's the purpose of Lone Star Governance, is to keep us focused on those precious kids and how to help them. So any questions related to the trackers? I know Mr. Moreno was asking, okay, so how do you track it? We track it under what goes under vision and goals, what goes under accountability, and we look at the rubric to see, okay, is this tied to a vision and goal? We go through the rubric that you were trained on, and we look at, okay, does this fit under this category or whatever? And so I know it seems arduous. I want to commend you on the fact that you ask questions about it, that you challenge about it, that you say, how can we get better? Because that's all part of it. I didn't say that it would be comfortable. It's not comfortable. It's hard work, but you have to ask yourself, aren't our kids worth it? And the answer to that is absolutely they are. And so what thoughts, what questions, what concerns do you have?
All right, so I'll go ahead and start because I know I've been waiting for this portion.
Yes,
So
sir.
here, just are we saying, some of these look like day-to-day things that they already do, that's a part of their job description.
Okay.
So we're saying that when we're looking for like checking the mics, recording the backup, they're spending 2 hours. Is that them here with us, or is that them prior to them getting here? Like, because this seems like their day-to-day operation.
Yeah, sir. I mean, we get them out here. If it's on a campus, which usually it is, they're there before, like right after lunch. They end up clearing up the lunches and they go set up. They go set up, and then Dr. Hinojosa will go swing by there, and then Mr. Gonzalez will swing by there, and then the foreman will go swing by there for each one, and then eventually Miss Patty heads over there about 4:30, Miss Patty, and they're still there, correct?
So like, for example, like here with like Ms. Jackson, what she does work with obviously our benefits. It says coordinating with purchasing, creating, supporting documentation, historical review of previous proposals. So these are things they're going to present to us as a board, right? That we, as it's day-to-day business, correct, sir?
It's the agenda item. So for example, this was our regular board meeting. Right, we're getting ready for the agenda for the following, for the next month.
Yeah, which is not necessarily something that we request for them to do, right? We're not requesting that agenda item.
Correct.
Because that's how, and that's what makes this a little difficult to digest, not necessarily that we can't accept it. It's just the fact that this is the stuff that makes the district run. And that's where it just, I mean, I would say that some of these numbers are kind of like, even with HR, with misconduct, board reporting, we're not in those conversations, but that's what they're preparing for us based on the superintendent's need to present to us. So is that not within their normal job frame, or is that something that you're saying we've asked them to go above and beyond for?
I'm not saying it. The LSG model says.
What is the
to
LSG model say?
It says to calculate the approximate cost to prepare for, debrief after a board meeting, set up for a board meeting, prepare the documents. And so I don't know everything in here, Ms. Moreno.
I get that too, but I would think as, you guys are working on this collaboratively, it would be a discussion that would be put into consideration with the people that are organizing this, because I know you guys have had a somewhat of a hand in it in terms of being able to either start it from 2018 or 2019 with Crable all the way to now. But that I get, that's something that I know you didn't necessarily agree with either, saying like, this is not necessarily everything that we should be honing in on. But with the time tracker, I'm looking more so, not necessarily that, I understand that. There's a difference between this one here that we had, and then the one that we just received recently for like the March 20th, where it has student outcomes and then adult behavior minutes.
Yes, that you don't see. That is what I was saying. Quarterly is what you see. The time tracker, this is
This right here, this is,
that is what Ms. Ortiz reports to you
Okay.
because that's done on individual meetings.
so when do we see this? Because this is the first time I saw it was this past meeting,
Well,
or with
you-
the past HH.
I'm sorry,
I hadn't seen this before this past
Right.
HH.
right.
So when
The-
did is this just for you or?
It's for Ms. Ortiz and that's what she reports to you. That's what's up on the screen for
No,
you.
this isn't on the screen.
I'm sorry?
This isn't what we see on the screen. This is, should we see the other one? We either have seen this one or we've seen that. No, it's a different formula, but I see that we haven't gone over it. But this was what was shared with us recently, which was for the March 20th and the subsequent meetings. That's why I was just like, is this something different? Because you have also the count of agenda items, all that stuff.
What's the item name at the top? Does
It
it
just
not
says-
say time tracker?
It does say time
Okay,
tracker on it.
time tracker is done monthly. It's done monthly.
Yeah, and this is.
And
what we're
that
used to
form
seeing.
comes out of the 2023 booklet.
Yeah.
So you probably still have the 22 booklet.
No, I
from
have
last
it. I
year.
see it, but I'm saying we never got to that point. I think when we stopped, we didn't discuss it. We went over the school of thinking or the that's where we stopped. We didn't go into the time tracker.
Time tracker is done for each board meeting and a board member is responsible for doing
So we
that.
went into the theory of action. We never went into this, so I hadn't seen this before.
Okay, it's in your
No,
manual
I see.
and
I
yes, sir.
see it. I'm
It's in
telling
your
you,
manual. And
we
so
didn't discuss it with us. You didn't explain to what it was. That's what I'm telling you. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's something new that, again, that's what.
it's not new. It's been around since 2016. So
So-
if it wasn't explained in the 2 or 3 times you went through, then Region 20 failed. I'm
Yeah, and
sorry.
I'm sorry for
I
saying that. then.
I have never presented that we didn't go through time tracker, so I don't know.
So ma'am,
So-
again, so this is what I'm gonna reference. I'm not saying that I don't understand this, because that's what you're misunderstanding as well. I'm telling you that this wasn't communicated to us. And for a fact, I know I haven't been discussed, this hasn't been discussed with me. And so it is something that it should fall on your shoulders. But at the same time, I see this part. And to me, I have no problem with it. But to me, well, actually, I have a problem with the adult behavior minutes listed like that. But this is what we've been accustomed to. And so what I was saying before you kind of misunderstood what I was referencing is that I'm accustomed to this, I'm accustomed to that, but this hasn't been properly or effectively communicated to us on how it relates. It's something different that we're not accustomed to. So if it is 2016, since it got in since its inception, great. But as we both know, it's been multiple instances where things are constantly changed and there's some things that you overlook or omit for the sake of time. So perhaps that's what was happening here. But
The-
we didn't get to it. That's what I'm telling you.
Typically, boards only see the progress tracker. And that's done quarterly. The board member that helps do the time sees that second one, which is called time tracker. And so that's the difference.
Ms. McAnally, let me ask you this. We hire you for our service. Our district pays you to be our coach and to guide us and lead us and maintain us in our roles as trustee. However, I don't recall, and I mean this with all due respect, I've only been here since August of 2019, but I don't recall at any point where you introduce something LSU related that is now coming into effect. And I say that because if we're used to this one sheet of paper, one template, and then it changes. LSG says, okay, we're not going to use this formula or these, colors, or it's going to be black and white instead of colored. We're never told that by our coach. You never address any changes with us. They just kind of pop up. And so when I am asked from my colleagues, when did this happen? How did it start? My answer is, when Ms. McAnally pointed it out to me. But we don't ever have an engaging conversation from our LSG coach that says, and folks, just so you know, this is what you've been using for the last year and a half. However, I was told we will now begin using this. And let me explain how different it is or not. So to be fair, we don't have any introduction as to what is now going to be the new norm while we navigate through this LSG journey. And I think if you're going to provide a service to us, because we're paying for this service, I think that the only thing that is a professional courtesy is give me a heads up. Let me know what is changing. Let me know now I can't meet with you for 2 hours. I can only meet with 3. And I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. I'm just throwing things out there. As a courtesy, because we're your customers, I would appreciate knowing, you know what, now we're going to have to do this. Because this is now what I am expected to teach you all to be in a good governance role. But we're not. You know, I am asked as board president, Ms. Ortiz will ask me, Ms. Limon, Mr. Moreno, when did this start? How did this happen? Why are we still here? And I don't have an answer because I haven't been told the reasons why. I haven't even been given a heads up as to, 2 months from now, we're going to have to change something. We're going to add something to the agenda, or we're going to have to change it. I have no idea. And I'm not saying that I'm speaking for Mr. Moreno, but I think that's what he's implying. At some point, I think it is a professional courtesy to let us know, this is what you all were using. This is what you're going to use now. And I'm just throwing an example out there. And I mean that with all due respect, because you and I work very well together. However, I also have to put my hat as a trustee because we are paying for a service. And at times that service hasn't been 100%. And I'm going to throw something else out there that maybe I shouldn't because we have a conservator, but I think it's only fair for me to say it. I did ask not too long ago, when was a contract with our LSG coach up? Because and I'm not saying I with the board, I myself, only being here since 2019, we may be moving forward. And that has been with the help of our LSG coach. But we as individuals and as a team of 7 and 8, we have really put a lot of work into getting this board to be what this board is. And in order to comply with our conservators' best practice of every 5 years, you should go out and seek the same service from another individual, I will be asking to let's get others, because I don't see that we're moving forward. There's a lot of things that we're not getting for the service that we're paying for. And if we are the ones that are keeping you from giving us that service, please, by all means, let me know. Let us know. But it concerns me that these questions are being brought up and there's not really an answer at your end. Ms.
I'd like
McAnally.
to answer. I'd like to answer.
Go ahead then.
During COVID, it was totally suspended. And until the conservator said we would meet and have LSG meetings, there was no opportunity, it seemed, to have Lone Star governance meetings. And the form that's been in question is a form that is used to calibrate. It's by us who calibrate. It's not something that I had to share. I'm sorry that you didn't see it then, but it's something that only we 3 calibrators use. And so that was one of the reasons I said, could it be projected at the meetings so that everyone, including the public, could see it? And so if we don't have LSG meetings at least quarterly, then there's not a way to keep you up. TEA has given us 2 iterations during 2023, And this just came out to me at, I'm doing training in Houston last weekend and again this coming weekend. And I just got this final iteration, I believe in March or April. And so I'm sorry that we have different books there, but that's one of the things I have been visiting that needs to be updated. So sure, that falls on my shoulders. I should have called and said, reprint those books, absolutely. But if we're going to be committed to the process, there has to be commitment to, we're going to meet, just as now we are being mandated to meet. And so it takes that because, and I apologize, but absolutely the agency has made multiple changes to the handbooks. And, but I'm not going to throw them under the bus. You know, I should have, if it's March or April, I should have made sure that everybody got a brand new one then. But it's hard to give you a manual and then not have opportunity to share that manual with you and not be able to guide you through that manual. Some very little language in the rubric itself has changed, but the tracker that you see monthly, I don't think it looks a little bit different, but I don't think it's even changed much from 2016 as you look through the iterations. This is cleaner than what you saw before. It looks cleaner, it looks better. But this is not, this is what I submit to TEA, but I have to have all of that extrinsic information that's at the bottom that you've not seen before. That's what Miss Patty and Miss Melissa and I look at every month. And so it's not typically handed to the board. Should you see every single thing? I guess that's up for debate. I don't know, but if you want to see every single thing, most of everything I get is out of the manual. I don't invent it. It comes from the agency and is in the manual. Some of the time they have issued manuals that didn't have just time tracker. They only had the quarterly progress tracker. I don't know why they left it out, but they did in some of the iterations. So I'm sorry. That's all I can say moving forward. Tonight, we spent less than half of our time on LSG, which is one of the reasons I was rushing. I know that BOP is super important, and I think we got you through that, or I hope we did. But getting to the BOP through that and finally to LSG so we could talk about it. Had we not gotten to this tonight, I still wouldn't have known what you know, were the issues. And all I can say is I'm sorry. And if you want a different coach, you certainly can contract with one. You can do so now, if you prefer. That's fine with me. My goal is to try and help you get through and be able to meet your exit criteria. If I'm not doing that, absolutely, you know, let me know. I am contracted for 3 hours a month. Last night were 2 hours. Tonight's 3 hours. That's 5 hours of my time. And in addition to that, I calibrate every meeting you have, and typically that takes additional hours. And so probably somewhere between 7 and 8 hours a month. And so, but I'm contracted for 3. That's what Region 20 is actually paid for. If you don't think you're getting your money for those 3 hours, then, you know, email me and let me know, and I'll talk to my boss and ask him who he can send to replace me.
Thank you, Ms. McInnes.
Cavazos.
Yes, Dr. Castleberry.
I need to correct your statement about my encouraging the 5-year cycle on contracts.
Yes,
That
go ahead, ma'am.
applies only to the auditor. That is not something that applies to all contracting services. I'm sure the district has many that have gone beyond 5 years.
Thank you, Dr. Castleberry. I appreciate you clarifying that for me. Are we moving on to anything else, or are we done for the night?
I have nothing else. I think that's it.
Then let me find my agenda. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 4.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. I will second that. And I will take the vote. We're going to do that electronically, please. So would you please open Okay, so the vote is now open to adjourn tonight's meeting. You have to tell me what time it is. Okay, we're ready to close the vote. So we have a total of 6 votes. 5 yes to adjourn the meeting, 1 no to adjourn, not to adjourn the meeting. So it is
8:48.
8:48 and tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.